If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
I love hearing that theme song in the morning. Thank you so much, Austin Angelo. I'm Bradley Clarke, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Game Show, the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows. And ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to tell you that The Game Show has hit the big 4-0, because this is episode number 40. I've got to say, despite being 40 episodes old, The Game Show is looking fabulous. And I'll tell you why. To begin with, for the first time ever, this episode of The Game Show will be 2 hours long. That's right, double the fun, double the game show goodness. So sit back, relax, and take all the audio in. And second, today's episode has a fantastic guest who's actually joining the Two Timers Club with his appearance today. Last time on the show, my guest was here to talk about his amazing career as a game show producer, as well as talk about a home game that he created. Well, today, he's here to once again talk about his amazing career as a game show producer and talk about a brand new home game that he has just created. However, before I introduce him and begin our conversation, I want to let you know some of the shows he's had the pleasure of working on.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ari Povich. Welcome to the primetime return of one of the most controversial game shows in the history of television. Tonight, 2 contestants will step into soundproof booths and battle for the opportunity to win the most money ever awarded on television. There is no limit as to how much you can win. In fact, a returning champion can literally take home millions and millions of dollars. So, let's get started and make television history with tonight's return of 21.
Tonight's mystery cover is an accordion player as well as a retired Air Force Brigadier General. Do you know who it is? Let's play On the Cover with your host, Mark Wahlberg.
Thank you very much. Welcome to On the Cover. If you think you know pop culture, you're in the right place. We have 3 players who think they know pop culture, ready to test their knowledge.
From General Hospital, it's Greg Vaughn. And from Days of Our Lives, it's Allison Sweeney. Today on Pyramid. And now here's the host of Pyramid, Donny Osmond.
Thank you very much. And thank you. Hello and welcome. It's Soap Week here on Pyramid. Today our contestants will be going for the money with 2 stars from top-rated daytime dramas. Let's meet them right now. First of all, Sybil Walker is a vegan raw food chef. She's going to be playing with Greg Vaughn from General Hospital. And we have over here Tony Sago. He's a market researcher. He'll be playing with Allison Sweeney from Days of Our Lives. Here we go.
Tonight, 8 contestants compete in a game show like no other.
The question is...
I don't know. Uh-oh.
Choosing the correct answers can win you $50,000.
What's up, baby?
But choose just one wrong answer.
The wrong answer is...
Oh, God.
And you're gone. On 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show.
You've got to be kidding me right now.
You guys all look so serious. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the most insane game show in the history of television. One of you, who we're going to call the winner in this case, is going to walk out of here with $50,000. I know. And we couldn't have made it more simple for you. All you got to do is answer a question correctly and you stay in the game. It's that easy. However, get just one question wrong, And you're not only going to be eliminated from this show, a penniless failure, because there's absolutely no fun in that for me. We are going to eject you from this show, and we have 101 different ways to do that.
Jacob, for $100,000, here's your first subject. Go.
Your tibia, your fibia, your calf.
Parts of your leg.
Gold, sail, tuna, fish. Mackerel. I was hired to put you kids to bed because your parents are out for
babysitter. Things a babysitter would say.
Okay, saltines.
Crackers, types of crackers.
Yeah. Single people, alcohol.
Things at a bar.
Cheerleaders. Happy cheerleaders. Go lucky cheerleaders.
Things that are joyful, things that are peppy. Things with pep. Things that cheer.
Pointy breasts.
Things that are perky.
Yeah!
If only this episode of the game show could be 10 hours long, then maybe we would be able to talk about his entire career so far. Thankfully, though, my guests and I have already talked about a number of the shows featured on his game show resume during episode 25. And now, we're going to resume our conversation as if there wasn't a 15-episode gap in between. Joining me on the game show for a second time is game show producer and creator of the game A.K.A., also known as From Endless Games, it's Aaron Solomon. Aaron, welcome back to the game show.
Thank you, Bradley. It's great to be back.
It is so great to have you on the show again. And once again, you're here on a milestone episode. Last time it was 25, and this time, episode number 40.
Wow. Do you have anyone booked for 50? Can I place my reservation now?
I'm going to pencil you in right now. Well, just like last time, we're going to talk about the game shows you've worked on, as well as a game that you created. And specifically, we're going to get to the game shows we didn't get to talk about last time that you've been employed on, as well as chat about your brand new game creation, A.K.A., also known as. Plus, later on, for the game of the day, you're going to play another Bradley Clarke original game, and I've created my own version of A.K.A. just for you to play, Aaron.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Aaron, you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Then let's get started. So last time we began the episode by talking about your game creation, That Was Awkward. So why don't we begin this episode by talking about your newest game creation, A.K.A., also known as. Why don't you start off by talking about the premise of the game and how you actually came up with the idea?
Interestingly, this was a game that I envisioned initially as a TV show. So about 15 years ago, I came up with a format. The working title was Say What? And the premise of the show was very similar, which is that I'm going to tell you something very familiar. So it could be a movie title, or it could be a popular phrase, or it could be a celebrity's name or something. But I'm going to say it in other words. I'm going to say it either as a synonym, or I'm going to sort of break it down by syllable and kind of express it in some different way. And your job is to figure out, what am I trying to say? And I tried pitching that as a TV show, and at the time, at least, it was kind of seen as fairly traditional. And, you know, this is when people were really obsessed with dropping people through holes or shooting them through catapults and giant visual gimmicks to kind of make the game work. So I didn't get a whole lot of traction as a TV show. So fast forward to a couple years ago, I was fortunate enough to be working with my friends at Endless Games, and I had sold them a game that was kind of a version of Cards Against Humanity called That Was Awkward. It was in that vein. It was kind of adult skewing, and they were so happy with the working experience that we had. They said, what else you got? And I said, well, you know, I've got this show, I've got that show. And I said, by the way, I've got this other thing that I never really kind of formatted as a board game, but it actually could be kind of a fun game. And I pitched them what was then called Say What? And they really loved the premise of it, and we started working on it, and now it's a brand new board game.
And we met working on Pyramid, and I know you love word association games just like Pyramid. Was your love and your experience working on word association games one of the reasons why you wanted to revisit it, and then eventually, hopefully, it would become a board game like it has?
Yeah, exactly. For me, word games have always been my favorite. Everybody's got their kind of personal favorites. Some people love trivia games, or Price is Right certainly has a huge following. But for me, it's always been words. I've loved Wheel of Fortune, and Now You See It, which was like a word search game show from the 70s.
Every answer to every question is right here before your eyes. And Now, you see it. Now you see it. And the star of our show, now you see him, Jack Norris.
Thank you, Johnny. Hello there. Thank you very much. Oh, what a nice group. Thank you. Oh, thanks to our guests in the studio for that warm reception. That's beautiful. And thank you at home for joining us on Now You See It, the show where we give you every answer to every question. All you have to do is find it. That's the task facing these 5 folks today.
That's the kind of thing I gravitate toward. And I was really excited that this is a game that I felt was just a real pure, simple, traditional game that could finally have a home in some sort of platform. And I'll explain a little bit further kind of how it works. So it's now called A.K.A., also known as. And very simply, what happens is I give you a category, and then I will tell you the answer, except I will tell you that answer in different words. So an example of that, the one I like to give, is if I were to tell you the category was Tom Cruise movie, and the answer is also known as assignment unachievable, you would say
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible, exactly. Or if I were to say uppermost pistol, you would say
Top Gun.
Top Gun. Or if I were to say mixed drink, you would say
Cocktail.
Cocktail. There you go. And so I started realizing that, wow, there's actually a lot of words and titles that can be expressed differently. And the fun of the game for me, and sort of the wizard behind the curtain or under the hood, whichever analogy you prefer, is as a writer, the way that I sort of mask these can change. So sometimes I can give a direct synonym like mixed drink for cocktail, or I could say rooster follow. And then rooster, you go, oh, another name for rooster is cock, and another name for follow is to tail somebody. So depending on which way I choose to go with that, I can kind of keep people off kilter, and they just can't quite know what to expect, because people do get better at the game as they go, and I just don't want anyone to ever feel like they can cakewalk through it. I always want to feel like they're a little bit kind of, oh boy, which version of deduction do I need to use to kind of solve this one? And it's just been a lot of fun to write these, because the challenge that Endless Games gave me is, in order to make this a board game that people can play and feel like they can use it for months and months, is that I ended up generating over 1,000 of these over the course of probably 3 or 4 months. And it's impossible to do them all in one sitting. It's just really mentally taxing. But every time I would sit down for a couple hours and do it, it's just so much fun to do. And it was a lot of fun to write, and I hope people have as much fun or close to as much fun playing it.
Isn't it so satisfying when you know you have a great idea and then you sit down and then just craft that game?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I have to give a shout out to Adam Neediff. He's somebody I've had the privilege to work with on a couple of shows. Adam is also a game show biographer. He has several books out. And I was just recently reading his book on Alan Ludden. Adam talks about the process of developing Password and the way that they really very meticulously crafted it. And there's a lot of thought that went into, we're going to use celebrities, or are they all going to be civilian contestants? Are the words going to be over their head? Are they going to be superimposed? Do we need to vocalize them in some way for the home audience? How do we make this so that it's the sort of ideal playing and viewing experience? And what they found was they put in a lot of work to it, but there was just this sort of moment where they all looked at each other and they're like, yeah, we know we got something. We really know we have something. Like, even before they taped their first episode, they all felt pretty good about it. And I mean, honestly, this is the way I feel about this particular game, which is that it doesn't take a lot of effort to explain, which I think is very important in a game. You don't want to feel like you're having to give a lecture to somebody with all these different bylaws and rules. The challenge is really just in creating them all. But in terms of playing it, it's very straightforward. And so I'm hoping that if people just like the core of the game, it's going to be one of those that they were like, first you'll hear an answer, and maybe you'll get it, or maybe you won't. And if you don't get it and you have it explained to you, you go, oh, okay, cool, give me another one, you know? And so if I can elicit that sort of feeling in people, then I feel like it's a success.
And any game show superfan would hopefully know that Password was very influential. It was the first show that paired celebrities with contestants. Brad fact!
Yeah, exactly. Adam talks about the fact that prior to that point, there were celebrities on the same stage as contestants, but it was usually they were on a panel trying to guess the contestant's profession and what's my line, or it was just more of an adversarial relationship. That was the first time that they actually took a celebrity and kind of brought them down from on high to with the average Joe or Jane, and then just kind of saw how that interaction worked. And obviously it's been great, and Pyramid uses it to this day on ABC.
Well, milestone episodes are always special, and here's another reason why this milestone episode of the game show is indeed a special one. Aaron has selected some A.K.A. cards from the actual board game for me to play. So it's time for a brand new segment in which I relinquish hosting control to my guest so that I may play a game myself. This is the Skinny Microphone Shuffle. Skinny Microphone Shuffle. So Aaron, for the time being, I'm handing the skinny microphone over to you.
Okay, hey everybody, how you doing? Suddenly become Guy Smiling. So the way the board game works, just so everybody knows, and the board game is available via Amazon. You can also go to endlessgames.com and you can purchase it. But the rules for the game are very simple. You designate somebody to be your host for each game. So that person's not playing, but they're the one who kind of sees all the answers and they moderate the game. Then of the remaining players that you have, so ideally you play with at least a total of 3 people, but one person will be the host, and then you have a team A and a team B. So you can divide the remaining players into those 2 teams. And in the main round, it's just sort of individual AKAs. So I will give you one category and one answer that is also known as something else. And the first player to raise their hand gets called on, and if they get it correct, they earn a point for their team. If you get it incorrect, your team is frozen out, and the other team can now huddle and discuss and try to steal that answer. And the first team that gets a total of 5 points wins the main game, move on to the final round. So why don't we play a little bit of the main round, just so you can kind of get a sense of how that works, and then we'll talk about the final round when we get there. So the way we'll do it, obviously, there's no 2 teams here, so we can't really simulate that. But what we'll do is we'll just play them one at a time, and you'll kind of see that there's only one AKA answer that we're looking for per category, and that'll change when we get into the final round, okay?
Sure.
All right, here we go. So we'll start out with hopefully an easy one. Your category is Famous Boulevard.
Famous Boulevard.
And the answer is also known as dusk.
Sunset.
Sunset. There you go, Sunset Boulevard. So if you had raised your hand, I called on you. You get the right answer. You got 1 point for your team. All right, next category. Member of a wedding party. The answer is also known as housekeeper with integrity.
Maid of honor.
There you go. Housekeeper's a maid and integrity is honor, so maid of honor. Okay, this one's a little trickier. Okay, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
All right, your category is on the porch.
Okay, on the porch.
And the answer is also known as greet Mr. Damon.
Welcome, Matt.
Welcome, Matt. You got it. Nicely done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Greet is to welcome, and Mr. Damon is Matt Damon. And that's the other thing, too. In this game, the answers are not necessarily spelled the same as long as they sound the same. So welcome, Matt, of course, only has 1 T in Matt.
Right.
Matt Damon has 2 T's, but that's a little bit of an exception I took.
And to me, that's another fun element of the game because it makes you wonder if the clue is going to hint at the correct spelling of the word in the answer or a different way of spelling a word in the answer.
Yeah, when possible, I would try to think of what's the obvious thing and then go one step beyond that so that hopefully when you think of it, it's not something that immediately came to mind. It actually takes a little bit of work to kind of deduce it.
Right.
So, all right, you want to try another one?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Your category is cocktail, and the answer is also known as neckwear belonging to me.
Mai Tai.
Mai Tai, exactly. Well done. You're good at this. See? You can host and be a contestant.
I like to be well-rounded.
Yeah. Let's try this one. Your category is elected official. And the answer is also known as guitarist John. And I'll tell you, by the way, this one stumps most people that I play.
Okay, good, because it's about to stump me. Guitarist John.
So you're looking for an elected official. So part of the process, you can start sort of free associating, okay, what are some different elected officials?
Right.
And then compare that against the also known as phrase. So if this were the real game, if nobody says anything within 5 seconds, you time them out. You say, okay, you throw it out so nobody gets it. The answer is Mayer. John Mayer.
Oh, guitarist John.
Again, not spelled the same, but it doesn't have to as long as it sounds the same.
You know what's fun about that one is that I was thinking it was 2 words.
Oh, so you were thinking guitarist was something?
Right.
And then John was something. Yeah, and that is part of the construct of the game, is that there's a few different ways to make something also known as. You can do a direct synonym, you can go word for word, or you can even go syllable for syllable. And I never tell you which way I'm going. You just kind of have to think about it. And there's usually enough clues to get you there if you really are on the right wavelength. All right, I'll give you one more, and then we can move on to the final round. How about that? Your category is non-alcoholic drink. The answer is also known as Absolutely Synagogue.
Shirley Temple.
There you go. Well done. Shirley, also spelled differently, but then synagogue is a temple.
It definitely paid to be Jewish with that answer.
It pays to be Jewish, yeah. Sounds like a game show in itself. For a very limited subset of fans. So well done. You did really well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So you ready for the bonus round?
Always. I always love a bonus round.
A good bonus round, yeah. Well, technically we call it the final round. The reason we don't call it a bonus round is that sort of implies that one team has won already and is now playing for something extra. We call this the final round because even the team that didn't win still gets a chance to play and possibly pull off a comeback. So here's how it works. In the final round, there are two possible categories. And whichever team got to 5 points first gets to choose which category they want to play, and the other team is stuck with the other category. And each category has 7 answers within it that I'm going to give you an also known as phrase for, but they all fit within that same category. You have 60 seconds to try to come up with all 7 answers, or as many as you can. I'm actually realizing that since I'm on my phone right now, I should pull up a timer here.
Because I'm going to pull up the timer for you later, so it's only fair.
Yeah, exactly, right. So fair is only fair, like you said. So the way it works is, so let's say your team won. Okay, you got 5 points first. You get to play Disney movies or major airlines.
Disney movies.
You're going to go with Disney movies. That seems like the more fun one. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Because you won the game, we're going to give you a bonus point already. So you already have 1 point in the bonus round, which means you can get up to 8 total points. We're going to start with the other team, though. We're going to start with them playing major airlines. But since you're the only person I'm playing with, we're going to have you play both of them. How's that sound?
Sounds fun to me.
Okay. So the trailing team is stuck with major airlines. They also don't have that bonus point. So the max that they can get in that time is 7. So that is your challenge. If you're ready, I don't want to give you too much time to start brainstorming airlines.
No, go right ahead.
Ready to do this?
Yes.
All right. Good luck to you. The category is major airlines, and your 60 seconds start now. Anchorage State.
Alaska.
Correct. Don McLean's Pie.
American.
Right. Mississippi River Split.
Delta.
Correct. You can pass if you get stuck, by the way. Combined.
Combined. Pass.
Pass it. Okay. Nirvana's Teen Smell.
Spirit.
Spirit, correct. Old Western Border.
Old Western Border. Pass.
Pass it. Okay. Airplane Sad. You can pass if you want.
Yeah, pass.
Combined. 5 seconds.
Go to the next one.
Okay. Old Western Border.
Southwest.
Oh, that's time. So you got 4 points, which is a respectable score. You got Alaska for Anchorage State. You got American for Don McLean's Pie. You got Delta for Mississippi River Split. And you got Spirit for Nirvana's Teen Smell. Well done there. Combined is United.
Oh, United, yeah.
Old Western Border, Frontier.
Never heard of that one.
Never heard of Frontier Airlines? Yeah, they're a smaller one. And Airplane Sad is JetBlue.
Oh, JetBlue.
So here's how it would work. So let's say you are the trailing team. So you scored 4 points, so that is now the score to beat. So the team that had won the main game, they have a bonus point, so the score is 4-1 going into this. So the trailing team now needs 3 to tie, 4 to win. But of course, we'll play the whole thing just because it's fun. So your category is Disney movies, all right? You need 3 to tie yourself, 4 to beat yourself.
Perfect.
Which sounds very bizarre, but that's the situation. Are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Category Disney movies. Time starts now. Snoozing Hottie.
Sleeping Beauty.
Yes. Frostbitten.
Frozen.
Yes. The Tiny Fish Woman.
Little Mermaid.
Yes. For the win, Many Firehouse Dogs.
101 Dalmatians.
You got it. Let's keep going. The Unbelievables.
The Incredibles.
Yes. Frampton Skillet.
Pass.
Hot chocolate.
Pass.
Pass. Back to Frampton skillet.
Peter Pan.
Yes. Hot chocolate.
Hot
For
chocolate.
the sweep.
Coco.
Yes. You were on the table. Well done.
Yes.
That was great. Yeah. And some of these come a little inside out. Hot chocolate. You're not sure if you're supposed to do a synonym for hot and a synonym for chocolate.
Right.
Or if the whole thing is a concept. So, again, that's part of keeping you off balance there.
That was very good.
Thank you. Yeah. We can do one more of these if you'd like.
Let's do another bonus round. And before we move on, I think we should mention that this is a great example of a game where if you keep constantly playing it, you're going to get better at it. So that's why it's a great game.
Yeah. What we found is that when I play with people, and I always try to workshop my games, it helps me hone it and just get a sense of what's easy, what's hard, and also if there's certain clues that people find unsatisfying. What I found is people really do get better at it as they go. And so once you get your head into that space, hopefully people are going to be like, yeah, okay, now I get it. Let's play some more. With that in mind, your choices are hairstyles or classic video games.
I got to go with classic video games.
Classic video games would be your choice. And so once again, you're going to play both, but the idea would be you would stick your opponent with hairstyles. And, some of these are scientific terms and things that are very academic, so you really are sticking them with something that's kind of less fun and hopefully less gettable. But anyway, let's pretend you are the trailing team now. You're going to play hairstyles.
Yes.
You ready? You got 60 seconds.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. They start now. Wasp home.
Beehive.
Yes. Wasp sound.
Pass.
Pass. Okay. Mr. Marley.
Bob.
Bob is correct. Not temporary.
Permanent.
Permanent. Nice. Seinfeld coil.
Jerry curls.
Yeah, well done. Parisian lemon squeeze.
Pass.
Pass it. The McAdams.
Pass.
Okay. Wasp sound.
Buzz.
Yes. Back to Parisian lemon squeeze.
I have no idea.
Oh, that's time. You did great on this, by the way. The one that usually gets most people is the Seinfeld coil. So you figured that one out. So you got 5. The ones you did not get are Parisian lemon squeeze. So Parisian is French. Lemon squeeze is twist. French twist. And then the other one was the McAdams. So who do you know that has the last name McAdams? Rachel McAdams. So it's the Rachel from Friends.
Oh.
Okay, so if this were the actual game, that means the trailing team now has set a pretty challenging score of 5. So the team that's in the lead gets their bonus point. So it's 5-1 to start off with. So you need 4 to tie yourself, 5 to win. Category is classic video games.
All right.
You ready to do this?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Your 60 seconds start now. Critter with 100 feet.
Centipede.
Yes. Galaxy attackers.
Space invaders.
Yes. Suitcase filling guy.
Pac-Man.
Yeah. Eeyore gorilla.
Donkey Kong.
Yeah. Ping companion.
Pong.
Yes, well done. You've won, but we'll do the last 2. Rocks in a belt. Rocks in a belt.
Galactica?
Nope.
Oh, asteroids.
Asteroids, well done. All right, the last one for the sweep. Terrific Lemieux siblings. Terrific Lemieux siblings. 3 seconds.
Oh, Super Mario Brothers.
Yes! You've beaten yourself. Well done.
Thank you.
But hey, listen, you did really well. I'm not just saying this. You really did well at this. This is based on people that I've tested. You've gotten at least 1 or 2 more in each category than the average. So well done, sir. You're a fine contestant as well as a good host.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, Aaron, I will kindly take back the skinny microphone now as we've come to the end of the skinny microphone shuffle. Skinny microphone shuffle. Thanks so much, Aaron, for letting me play A.K.A. That was so much fun. But remember, later on, Aaron, you'll have a chance to play your own game with my version of A.K.A. that I created especially for you.
Great. I look forward to it.
So besides A.K.A., another project you're involved with now is a YouTube game show called TMI, Too Much Information. Why don't you go ahead and explain the premise of that, because I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, interestingly, this is another situation where this was actually $1 million game show that I originally conceived of. And the concept was, what if I gave you all the answers that you needed to win $1 million? You just had to say them back to me. And I sort of went about with that as the guiding principle. And I said, this would be kind of fun, sort of the anti-Jeopardy, where you don't need to know a lot going into it. Like, we're going to literally tell you everything that you need to know. And so the core of the game is you watch a 60-second video and you get inundated with facts. And the original concept was it was a total grab bag of facts. So it could be Gene Simmons' tongue is 7 inches long. The capital of Kuwait is Kuwait. Camels have 3 sets of eyelids. J is the only letter not mentioned in the periodic table. And you have all these different voices, male, female, coming at you. So it feels like the cocktail party from hell, sort of. It's like all this information coming into your brain. And in the course of those 60 seconds, you start thinking, okay, this is fine. I got it. And then what starts to happen midway through is at different points, people's brain just reaches saturation. And the brain starts going, okay, I can't remember all of this, so I'm going to pick and choose certain things, or I'm going to try to come up with some kind of a shortcut device. And what we found is that at the end of 60 seconds, almost nobody is able to remember every single thing they just heard. And it's only been a minute, and you just heard it, but almost everyone cannot retain all of that information. So after that's over, we ask you 10 questions, and they start easy, of course, and more obvious, and they get gradually more challenging. And if you were to get all 10 correct, you would have won the $1 million. So I went about, pitched the show, got some interest, but there was a bunch of like memory-related shows that were kind of in development at the time that I had created it. So ultimately wasn't able to get it sold as a TV show. So I ended up coming to this company, Fine Brothers Entertainment, that I was introduced to by a friend. And what they do is they run a channel called the YouTube React channel. I don't know if you've ever seen these videos, which is you're watching other people react to videos that they're watching. So it's kind of a weird semi-voyeuristic thing, but it's also kind of a funny experience because you're kind of identifying with the person in the video, but also being like, come on, man, how could you not know this? And most of the stuff that they do is just sort of fun challenges, or it'll be things like watch a millennial react to listening to the Rolling Stones for the first time, or, you know, things that are kind of generational. And they were starting to get into the world of game. And so I brought them this as a game, with the idea that we would play the game and then you would watch different people as they would struggle to come up with their own answers to this. And they loved this idea. So we did a pilot a couple years ago, and they wanted to theme all of the episodes around a particular topic. So our pilot episode was all about Star Wars.
Today you'll be playing a new game called TMI, A.K.A. Too Much Information.
Okay. Oh, gosh. I'm scared. Normally when you say TMI, it's not a good thing.
We're going to show you a video containing a lot of facts and information about a specific topic. After the video is finished, we're going to ask you 10 questions about it, and you'll need to answer all 10 correctly to win the game.
All 10? Dang, that's a lot. Okay, I gotta put like my thinking cap on.
It sounds fun. I'm already churning inside, hoping I'll get everything right.
If you get stuck on a question, we're giving you one bailout to use whenever you want. We'll display 3 multiple choices on screen, with 1 being the correct answer.
Oh, okay. Just 1, huh? Ooh, choose wisely.
The subject of today's video is Star Wars.
Okay, I think I'll do decent.
No, I'm confident. I already have a lot of information about Star Wars.
Oh, okay, now it's hype, because I love Star Wars.
And it was a big success. They got over 400,000 views in 1 week, which was very impressive, I thought. And all the comments were like, this is awesome. You guys should do Harry Potter. You guys should do Pokemon. You guys should do this. You should do that. And so we ultimately worked out a deal, and they have now just shot their 7th episode. And each one has its own theme, and every time it's the same thing. You're watching a video, and there are graphics that come at you at the same time reinforcing that. So we're kind of doing everything in our power to kind of be like, here it is, here's the information, and then almost nobody can remember all of them and answer all 10 questions. So it's a game you don't need to know anything going into, but you really need to be alert during those 60 seconds because that information comes by quick.
Here we go. Pay attention because I'll only play the video once.
Can I take notes?
No.
Dang.
Okay, geez, man. All right, here we go.
The original Star Wars film had a production budget of $11 million. Yoda's first name is Minch, although it's never mentioned in any of the films. R2-D2 stands at a height of 43 inches. Tupac Shakur auditioned for the role of Mace Windu in The Phantom Menace. The puppet for Jabba the Hutt weighed 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
David Lynch turned down an offer to direct Return of the Jedi. The sound effects for the lightsabers were made by combining the hum of an old television and the buzz of a film projector. The language spoken by the Ewoks is a combination of Tibetan and Nepalese.
Terrible.
Harrison Ford was paid $10,000 for his performance in the original Star Wars film. The scenes on the planet Tatooine were filmed in Tunisia. Chewbacca was partially inspired by George Lucas's dog, Indiana. The famous text crawl at the beginning of Episode 4 took 3 hours to film. In The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon Jinn's communicator device is an altered woman's Gillette razor. In A New Hope, when Leia is prisoner on the Death Star, her prison cell number is 2187. An ode to Lucas's first film, THX 1138. The man who played Wedge Antilles in the original trilogy is Ewan McGregor's. The man who played Wedge Antilles in the original trilogy is Ewan McGregor's uncle. The spacesuit worn by bounty hunter Bosk was recycled from the original Doctor Who series. Keira Knightley played Natalie Portman's decoy in The Phantom Menace. The famed Millennium Falcon is a white T-1300.
There is so much information!
The famed Millennium Falcon is a white T-1300 Corellian transport ship. 3 members of NSYNC have brief cameos in Episode 2, though their scenes were ultimately cut. In the original Star Wars movie, Darth Vader
this is too much information.
In the original Star Wars movie, Darth Vader has a total of 12 minutes of screen time.
That was a lot of information.
The name of the game is very fitting because that was just too much and I'm overwhelmed.
I personally have never gotten all 10 either. I get about 8 each episode.
If it wasn't me writing them, I don't know how well I would do either, to be honest with you.
There was a game show back in the 80s called Hitman, which revolved around the same premise. Contestants were told a lot of information and facts about a certain topic, and then were asked questions relating back to that information. Brad fact.
1/2 hour from now, you'll know enough about the making of Gone with the Wind and the Great Houdini to win $10,000 in cash if you were a contestant on Hitman. And now, here's the host of Hitman, Peter Tamarkin.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome to Hitman. And what you heard at the beginning of the show is indeed true. We're going to make you at home and our contestants here instant experts on 2 subjects. You see, although this is a quiz show, before we get to the questions, everyone, you and our players, are going to hear all the answers.
Were you a fan of Hitman and used that show as some sort of inspiration?
I definitely watched Hitman back in the day. I loved the rat race and all that. I did not explicitly look at that, but you're not the first person in the game show community who has mentioned after the fact, oh, this kind of reminds me of Hitman. And if I'm remembering correctly, what they did with that is it was almost like a reading comprehension thing where they would tell you like a mini story. Like, here's a story about ancient Egypt. And it would sort of go kind of sequentially, and then you'd have to go back and recount the information from the story. The way that this comes is it's called too much information because it's supposed to feel like this assault. So the way the information is coming at you is not in this prescribed story. It's these random, standalone, really interesting, but totally unrelated facts. And all of the facts are things that you shouldn't know going into it at all. It's just should be all brand new information to you. But it's just how much of that can you take in, given the fact that it's coming at you in this really scattershot manner. And that's part of the reason that we had alternating male and female voices, is because we just wanted the experience aesthetically was that it's not even the same narrator. So it really does feel like information is coming from all around you, and you're having to just sort of find this happy place, just not panic, take it all in, and then hopefully do as well as you can once we start with the questions.
And what's also fun is that there's some information that you think is obviously going to be a question, and then it's either not, or it's the thing attached to that piece of information is the question.
Yeah, this is something, because I've been writing game show questions now for 2 decades and have had the privilege of working on many different shows and working under many accomplished head writers and producers. And you learn different techniques because you never, as a writer, want to get predictable. You always want to create a game that on the surface is very simple to understand, so nobody's intimidated, but there are layers to how you make something more challenging. So just like in A.K.A., where sometimes we were taking the entire phrase and making that the synonym, sometimes we were by word. The way that too much information works is there are tricks to kind of make things more and less memorable to the average person. Obviously, it's not scientifically possible to do that for everybody because everyone's brain works differently. But the demo video that I created when I pitched the show, the very first question that I asked was, what's the best-selling candy bar in America? And the answer was Snickers. And when you watch the video, there was no other question about best-selling anything. There was no other question about food. And you would see the Snickers logo come at you, which is very familiar. It's something we've all seen. We all love Snickers. So it just immediately creates an aesthetic impression. And there's no other information given to you that would sort of muddy that water. But as we got more into the game, we started asking questions about, let's say, animals. And I might have given you 3 different facts about animals, like giraffes are the only animals born without horns, or camels have 3 sets of eyelids. A group of zebras is called a crossing. And you've heard all that. And so now at the end of it, you're like, oh, damn it, which one's a crossing? Was the crossing the giraffe? Or wait, were they the ones that have 3 eyelids? Or was it 3 eyelids? Or was it 5 eyelids? And then we get into the real higher level stuff, which is asking questions that have numerical answers. So it might be a 4 or 5 digit number that you're having to retain, knowing that there were other numbers mentioned as well. And you have to kind of place it all in context and remember the exact sequence of digits, which is a more challenging thing to do. And then there's other tricks that you mentioned, which is sometimes you embed the answer within the question because people tend to remember the very last thing that they heard. So there was, in the test video, the fact was the author of the Gospel of Matthew was Jewish. And so the emphasis is on the word Jewish. But the question was, which of the Gospels had a Jewish author?
Matthew.
And the fact that Matthew was in the middle of it, yes, exactly. It makes it less memorable than if we had ended with that. So I was kind of studying a little bit on psychology, how the brain works and what's sort of comforting and pleasing to the brain, and sort of using that to my advantage if I wanted to make an easy question, and then actually capitalizing on that and being a little devious with those tricks if we wanted it to be potentially $1 million question that not everyone would answer.
And of course, there are the dreaded numbers questions, which, to be honest, I think I do pretty well on, despite them usually being some of the toughest questions asked.
Well, the thing with numbers, we try to use them sparingly because numbers inherently, this is something I've learned over the years of game show writing, is questions where numbers are an answer are kind of inherently the least interesting kind of question because it just feels very dry and statistical, which isn't to say they don't have their place somewhere, but shows that have been all about numbers tend not to really last long because that's not what's interesting. We as humans, we like to hear a story. We like to hear names and characters and colors and landmarks and things that have emotional resonance to us. So if we're trying to create a game that's not just challenging, but it's also fun, yeah, you put in 1 or 2 numbers because obviously you want to give people that challenge, but I try not to very predictably make question 10 always some impossibly difficult number because then it just feels like we're screwing with you. Sometimes it's enough to be like, all right, what was the name of the guy who created that? And you're like, oh man, what was his name? And people struggle with names almost as much as they do with numbers, interestingly.
Speaking of writing, let's talk about some of the game shows that you've written for in the past. And I want to begin with one of the most interesting game shows to ever air on primetime network television, the 1,000,000-Second Quiz.
Oh, yes.
See this chair? This is the 1,000,000-Second Quiz money chair. When you're in it and answer simple questions, you make money. A lot of money. $10 a second, $36,000 an hour, $864,000 a day. You could win the biggest prize in game show history. Go to NBC.com or download the app now and play for a chance to be a contestant, and you can get in that chair. NBC's The 1,000,000-Second Quiz premieres Monday, September 9th, 8/7 Central, live on NBC.
Was this one of the most mind-boggling game show writing jobs you ever had because of the amount of questions that had to be created for this 11-day quiz show?
Yeah, this was kind of a crash course in being as methodical as a head writer as I could be, because every game show has its own challenges. There's some that are just the nature of the questions themselves are very dense and complex or comedic or whatever, and so therefore the challenge is sort of the quality of it. And this one was a real quantity challenge because in addition to the game that was on for an hour on NBC every night, there was 23 hours of gameplay that was happening on NBC.com. And the questions didn't all have to be amazingly, brilliantly written or super geniusly tricky in their way, but they had to be legitimate and they had to be pinned, which is the research term for accurate and indisputable. So what I did when they first offered me the job was, I remember it was actually my birthday. I was flying to my nephew's college graduation, and I sat there on the plane, and I had them give me all the information. I'm like, okay, when do we air? How many weeks do we have? What's the format? I said, let me just literally sit there and crunch numbers. And I crunched numbers and I crunched numbers. And I said, okay, so we're going to need 18,700 approved questions in 3 months. And we're going to need the number of researchers to cross-check that information. And because there are so many writers that are working on the show, it's impossible for one head writer to oversee everybody. It's just too much to do on a daily basis. So we created this entire civilization of writers and researchers and head writers and head researchers. And I think if I remember correctly, we ended up with 16 writers and something like 35 researchers that worked on the show. So we literally had a writing and research team of over 50 people, and most of that work was done up front. Some of that work was done the actual day-to-day, because if you recall, the format had 1 or 2 or 3 questions in each stack that were based on things that happened either that day or the day before. So we wanted to be day and date accurate, as well as asking sort of evergreen classic trivia questions. We were very methodical about how we approached it and who was assigned what. We kind of differentiated what was the questions that appeared on the NBC broadcast show. We wanted to make sure that those were the best of the best, most interesting questions. And then for the other 23 hours, we would be like, all right, Michael, you're doing state flags. Go ahead and write about all of them. So-and-so, you're doing state mottos. Go and do all of them. And then we would sort of spread them out in a very systematic way so that they would occur at some point during those million seconds, because we could use every single one of those questions, and we did. We definitely wrote over 20,000 questions, because within that mix, there were questions invariably that would come back from research as either untrue, like they've been disproven, or there was a gray enough area that we were just nervous playing for multi-million dollars, that every single question could be challenged. So we also had that pressure, as we didn't want the one question that had sort of shaky research to be the thing that cost somebody a shot at $2.6 million. We definitely killed at least a couple thousand questions.
Now, were you a fan of the doubler? Because it was only used on the live NBC hour-long or 2-hour-long episodes, but it wasn't used during any of the other bouts throughout the gameplay.
Right.
I understand why it was used. You know, you want to make something exciting for live TV, but do you think that it was necessarily fair in terms of the game?
If you take their answer, Eric hits the doubler. 8-point question.
You know, I liked it because, remember, we were coming sort of on the heels of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which will always be the gold standard of multiple choice trivia games. And so we were trying to come up with some mechanisms in the game itself. I mean, set aside all the other business of line jumpers and having to sleep overnight and all that kind of stuff. But in the actual moment of playing the game, aside from the fact that there was a clock set on it, we wanted there to be some kind of a fun brinksmanship between the two players. And so we liked the idea of, if you weren't sure about it, but you thought the other person wasn't sure about it too, you could double them. And it's just a challenge, and there's a risk there too, because of course it could backfire on you, and then they could double back to you. So it created some variation and a little more intrigue than just, you know, here's another 4-answer question. Here's another 4-answer question.
And speaking of dramatics, another show you wrote for was the 2001 to 2002 primetime NBC version of Weakest Link, which, like the million-second quiz, was a show that needed a lot of questions to be written per episode. By any chance, were you in contact with the British producers of The Weakest Link to determine how many questions were written for a typical episode?
Here are the 8 contestants who will take part in tonight's show. One of them will walk away with up to $1 million. The rest will leave with nothing, as round by round they're voted off as the weakest link.
Welcome to the weakest link.
So I was a staff writer at that time, so I was not a head writer or a producer that was privy to some of those initial meetings. So I never really got information as to where we arrived at our daily quota, because usually every writer will have a quota of how many questions they're responsible to write, and that includes rewriting any questions that come back from research with problems or wording changes. All I remember is that we were asked to write somewhere between 25 and 30 questions a day, which includes the research. You have to provide a legitimate source, and I can't remember if we had to provide a second source as well, because usually they will double or triple source them to make sure for a network game show that these things are 100% accurate. So 25 to 30 questions a day for a game show writer, in addition to your rewrites, is a really heavy load. So that's all we knew, is that, wow, this show's kind of a grind to produce this quantity. But I don't know how much of that was derived directly from British and what they did.
Now, Aaron, you must really love writing for game shows that need a lot of questions per game, because prior to Weakest Link, you were a writer on NBC's revival of the controversial game show 21. Now listen to this. For each game of 21, there were 5 categories, and each category had a total of 11 questions, plus an additional 6 questions were needed for the Perfect 21 bonus round, plus a tiebreaker question was needed in case of a tie. This means that a total of 62 questions were needed to be written per game, which just so happens to be only one more question than a standard game of Jeopardy uses. Brad fact. And on top of that, there were multiple games within the 1-hour episode.
Yeah, that was a lot. I remember we were frustrated because there would never be any more than 2 of the 11 questions that were chosen per category, because for those who don't know, but I imagine most of your listeners do, the way 21 works is you're given a category. So it would be names in the news or sports or fashion or whatever. And you could choose anywhere between a 1-point question all the way up to an 11-point question. So there's 2 contestants, so one would choose one of the questions, and then the other, not hearing what their opponent chose, would pick a question. So sometimes they would both pick the same one. They might both pick an 8-point question, and that would kill us because we're like, oh my God, so there's 10 questions that will never see the light of day that we took the time to write and research and whatever. So to the extent that we could, we tried to repurpose some of those categories. So if it was something as generic as sports or fashion or whatever, a lot of times whatever the unchosen categories were, we would just replenish the chosen questions within that category and then air it a few weeks later. But if it was a really specific question, like about a celebrity or something, it would just seem very odd to revisit that whole category. So unfortunately, the other questions that were all written just live forever in a database, unseen by man.
The original version of 21, which of course was part of the quiz show scandals of the 50s, all the questions were these hard, open-ended questions. And for the new version, they were all multiple choice. Was this because of Millionaire and NBC wanting to do as much as they can to replicate Millionaire?
I'm sure there was some of that, because networks tend to be very copycatting in terms of, we want our version of whatever. Also, just to your point, the old game was rigged, and there's only so much that we could do, especially we had such a quick ramp-up period. They decided to blow off the pilot altogether of 21, and they just went right to series because NBC really wanted something to compete against Millionaire. So we didn't have the time to cast phenomenally genius-level contestants. A lot of times we just cast people who did pretty well, and they seemed to be photogenic and interviewed well, but we couldn't count on them being able to pull out who was the king of Norway in 1743. So multiple choice at least gives you a fighting chance, and it gives also the home viewer a chance to play along, so they're not hopelessly lost. They at least can pick answer B and be like, maybe I'll be right.
And then the new version also included the second chance element, which was basically a family member who came in to help a contestant if they wanted help on a specific question, which to me was just another trying to copycat Millionaire and use a similarity to the phone a friend.
Yeah, it kind of was. And what's interesting is subsequently Millionaire actually brought in that exact lifeline, which is bring in someone physically. But the unfortunate thing about the way that show was rushed to air is that there were a lot of things that would have benefited from workshopping off air. And there was a famous contestant who was on there, or at least famous within our community, Raheem Oberholzer. Does that name mean anything to you?
Yeah, he was at one time the biggest money winner in game show history. Brad fact.
Raheem, you are the TV game show king. $1,060,000. Raheem.
Yeah, which is one way to put it. Another way to put it is we called him the accidental millionaire because he was a guy who was reasonably bright, but the way that his game played out, he basically benefited from every format flaw that we had. So he benefited because the other player could strike out before he did. He benefited because he needed the second chance for a question that most people thought was pretty gettable, so he needed his dad to come in and rescue him. And there were just a lot of things that he did that really made it feel like he didn't earn that million in the same way that John Carpenter did on Millionaire, for example, or other people who have truly shown that they have exceptional trivia knowledge. So that's sort of a lesson, too. as a show creator, if someone were to tell me, hey, we're buying your show and it's going on the air in 2 weeks, of course I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get it ready. You don't want to lose out on that opportunity, but there's a risk when you don't go through those steps to develop a show as thoroughly as you could, that something could happen on air that's sort of embarrassing to the show. Raheem Overholser, you could see the look in his eyes when Maury Povich told him he was a millionaire. He was almost like, really? Like, it was not at all this sense of, yes, I earned this. There was a point in time where people thought that if Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is good, then Who Wants to Be a 2 Millionaire is better. And I think all of the shows that came out around that time fell into that a little bit. I know that Greed on Fox, which was a great show created by a close friend of mine, Bob Bowden, but I'm quite certain that the reason that it was a $2 million prize is that somebody at Fox said, ABC's giving away $1 million? Well, we'll double them, and therefore it'll be twice as good of a show. That's not necessarily true. Yes, of course, it's exciting when you have a bigger pot, but just because you throw big numbers out there doesn't make it more appealing to viewers. And in fact, viewers will get savvy to the fact that if somebody's winning $100,000 for one game of 21 where they had to answer, let's say, 2 questions because their opponent got the second chance and missed it and got 2 strikes, and then they missed another question and they got 3 strikes, so by default, the other player wins. It's not satisfying. And if it's not satisfying and you're experiencing that and it seems unfair to one contestant, people do respond very strongly to the fairness thing. So the integrity of the game is as important, if not more important, than the actual amount of the prize money you're giving away. And in fact, I've talked to another friend of mine, Mandela Logan, who is an executive at Nickelodeon. He told me that the instinct of fairness is actually something they've noticed in kids in their demographic, that when they focus group a new game show, that one of the top things that kids point out is, does this feel fair? And in this sort of era of sensationalism, there's this temptation to be like, oh, great, we played 4 rounds and Bradley's won all 4 rounds. And then all of a sudden in round 5, we quintupled the points and Aaron answered 1 question. And just like that, he beat Bradley. And, you think, isn't that great? How cool. What a great comeback. And what they're finding in their statistics is kids are like, well, that's not fair. Bradley did a lot more work. He clearly dominated most of the game. He should win the game. And the fact that that instinct exists already in kids and certainly carries with us as adults, that should be something that game formatters, game producers are mindful of, because you just can't create a spectacle that, when all is said and done, is very transparent and it's clear that you're trying to create this fabricated moment that was not earned. People will see right through that.
So you basically just described my complaints with the Family Feud format.
We talked about that. I worked for 3 years on the Louis Anderson version, and this was back when people were struggling with the fact that the original game show had 24 minutes of program time in a half hour with 6 minutes of commercials. And I think at that time we were cut down to, it was either 22 minutes or maybe 22 and a half or something like that. So we had to figure out some way to cut a certain amount of program time. And where we landed at the time was this very regimented format where on the old version, if you hadn't won after 4 questions, we'd go to a 5th question. And so there was a little bit more gradual of an increase, single points, then double points, then triple points. Here we had to go single, triple, and it's almost every time the team that got the number 1 answer in the triple round won the game. So you hit it right on the head.
And at that time, in the Louis Anderson version, there was no 300-point win target.
No, there wasn't, because we knew we didn't have the program time to creep up and get there as gradually as possible, because if people are having a really bad game and they only got the number 4 answer and then the other team stole with the number 3 answer, great, you got 27 points, and now we're suddenly creeping toward that 300. At least at the time, we didn't think that we had the latitude to be able to play an additional question, but there's got to be a way to do it. And the fact that Pyramid figured out a way to do the original format in less time, clearly Family Feud could have too. But I think over time, Feud has actually adjusted for that. They actually have improved their format and it feels more satisfying.
You mentioned a story to me once about the font on host Maury Povich's question cards, and I think the listeners might get a kick out of it. So if you wouldn't mind telling it, that would be great.
Yeah, so we learned early on that Maury Povich, at least at the time, did not wear contact lenses, but he had very poor vision, and he did not want to wear glasses and kind of come across as sort of the old professor or whatever, so he wanted to go without glasses. So what that meant was, whereas a host who had host cards that they were reading off of, normally it would be, let's say, a 5x7 card, we actually had to give him an 8.5x11 printout on cardstock, so like a size of a full piece of paper, and that would have the question on it, and it was in something like 30-point font. I remember it being just obscenely huge because it was what he needed so that he could play the game. And so it's subtle enough that most viewers won't pick up on it, and put a nice big 21 logo on the back of it, and then it seems like, oh, that's a choice they made just to kind of make it a nice big logo. But the reason that it was as big as it was is because the font had to be gigantic for Maury. But the truth of it all is a host who goes in front of a studio audience and then ultimately America is a tremendous responsibility. You've got to carry this game. You've got to come across authoritative. You've got to pronounce every bizarre scientific name and every person's name or whatever is thrown at you. It's got to come out of your mouth like you know all this stuff, when in fact you just learned it a couple hours ago in your trailer with the head writer, kind of went through pronunciations and all that. And you've then got to come out and seemingly effortlessly deliver all this material while keeping all of the gameplay rules in mind and maintaining order and keeping the show moving along. So part of producing is we'll do whatever the host needs so that they feel comfortable and they come across looking authoritative. And with all due credit to Maury, I thought Maury actually did a pretty viable job considering how fast we plugged him in there. I mean, he did not have a lot of rehearsal time, and he had to really master a pretty complicated format in terms of the back and forth and the points. And okay, now your booth is off, so therefore we can't hear you, but you can hear me. And he just needed one or two crutches or whatever. And all kidding aside, if that's what he needs, that's what we'll give him. And there's a lot riding on it because people had seen the movie quiz show. So even if you weren't alive back then to have watched that show or weren't familiar with it, there was already an understanding of what that drama was and how the game played. And here was NBC trying to not only recreate that sort of retro magic, but they were doing it in a way that had to be very transparently not rigged. They made a show of, in the press, they would have executive producer Phil Gurin would be literally handcuffed to the locked briefcase that had all the question material, being escorted with someone from standards and practices from the office to the stage, just to really reinforce the fact that this was played legitimately. Nobody got any answers in advance. There was a way to do this show legitimately. And that was our challenge at the time, and try to kind of create our own uniqueness in spite of the fact that it was clear that Millionaire success is what opened the door for NBC to be able to do $1 million show like that.
And yet another NBC $1 million show that you worked on as a writer was the Bob Saget version of 1 versus 100.
Oh, yes.
Which is still one of my favorite game shows of the 21st century.
One person can win a $1 million top prize simply by answering one question correctly. A contest that takes brains.
I feel ready.
Guts.
Let's do this.
Nerves of steel. But with a prize that big, the challenge had to be bigger. To win that top prize, you'll have to defeat 100 people. And if that wasn't hard enough...
We have 7 valedictorians, 3 summa cum laude, 3 brain surgeons, 10 Mensa members, $3 million winners from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Jeopardy champion, Ken Jennings.
This is like Jeopardy on speed. Tonight, 1 contestant, 100 opponents.
These guys are smart.
1 wrong answer and you're out.
Oh, please be right.
And a $1 million top prize.
The money or the mob?
From the producers of Deal or No Deal, it's 1 versus 100.
Welcome to 1 versus 100. I'm Bob Saget. And this is a brand new show. It's very exciting to me to be here. A new show where one person goes up against 100 people.
And thankfully, not like the other ones, I'm presuming this one was a little bit easier in terms of the load of questions that had to be written. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. You would linger a lot more on not only the question, but then the mechanics of waiting for all 100 people in the mob to weigh in with their answers. So there was a lot more business that kind of filled up program time. So we didn't need as many questions. So yeah, I think on the original NBC version, I think each writer was writing 10 questions a day, but each question had to be a little clever in the way it was worded, because sometimes we were trying to tell like a cute little story. Like there was a question that said, while at a family reunion, you inadvertently graze your grandmother's arm and feel a spark. What caused it? Proton, electron, or neutron, or something to that effect. So the question in itself is basically what causes static electricity or shock. But there was a little story that was created around it that kind of gave the show its personality. So most of our time was really spent thinking about contextualizing the question and making it feel like a more fun, less sort of academic question than you're used to seeing. But there was a whole thing of once you got to a certain level, you wanted to create this false sense of hope of like, oh, this is great. For $100,000, I got this. And then suddenly you realize that the answers make it a harder question than you were expecting.
Are you ready to keep going?
Ready.
All right. Are you guys ready? All right. It's 1 versus 61. Each person you eliminate right now is worth $2,000, Ed.
That's good.
All right, here we go. Next question. Who was the first president of the United States? The one born in Maryland. See? The one born in Pennsylvania. The one born in Virginia. All right, 61 members of the mob, please answer now. All right, Ed. It's a little spin on the first president of the United States.
Yeah, I was ready with a name.
And good for you.
Yeah, but we probably wouldn't have eliminated too many.
You know what, Bob? I'm never going to be this close to $1 million. Give me the ball!
It's 1 versus 15. Everyone eliminated is worth $7,000. What is the capital of the United States? The city whose mayor is Richard Daley. The city whose mayor is Adrian Fenty. The city whose mayor is Gavin Newsom. Members of the mob, please answer now.
That was another trick of that show. And again, with each show, if they've done their job right, every show, of course, has similarities to other shows. And that's not a bad thing necessarily because people like trivia shows, so you want some familiarity. But you want to have some kind of DNA in the show that feels uniquely that show, something that really feels like you've found a voice, whether it be in the questions or certainly 1 versus 100, the fact that there was one player playing literally against 100 other people, some sort of aspect of it that makes it stand out and feel like, why do I want to watch this show as opposed to another show or in addition to another show?
Well, I've always wondered, how long did it take between games to switch out the mob members?
Forever. My experience on 1 versus 100 was kind of interesting personally because on the NBC version with Bob Saget, I was just a staff writer at the time. But then it got brought back several years later on GSN for one season. It really should have gone longer, but it was with a virtual mob of 100 people. They were not all on stage. They were all sort of represented electronically via Skype. And I was the co-executive producer of that version. So I really had a lot more familiarity about how all of the mechanics worked behind the scenes to put that together. But what I remember hearing for the original version, when we literally had 100 people on stage, is that there were between 400 and 500 people called for any given tape day. There was an entire sound stage that was rented out just to house those people for when they weren't on stage. So it was them plus craft service so that they could eat throughout the day and drink coffee, and just tables and chairs so that they could sit down and hang out, because these tape days would go for hours. So you wanted to make sure these people were well taken care of, because you might show up at 9 a.m. and then you don't go on stage until 5:30 p.m. So they had to have enough people standing by, ready to go at the producer's whim at whatever point the game ended that we needed a new mob.
I've previously had game show producer and mutual friend of ours, Jason Antonevich, on the game show as my special guest. And one of the questions I asked him is if he preferred the first money format on 1 versus 100, where the contestant earned money for each individual mob member knocked out, or the second money format, which consisted of a standard game show money ladder. Now, I prefer the first format. Jason prefers the second format. So, Aaron, break the tie. Which one do you prefer?
Oh, man. I'm not going to break the tie because I think each one has its merits. It's such a cop-out answer, I realize. There were obviously factors behind the scenes. GSN does not have the budget that NBC does. So, of course, we weren't going to give away the same amount of money total. And I think, if I remember correctly, the reason that we didn't want to give away money per person is because it would call attention to just how much less expensive this show was versus the NBC version. You didn't want to be like $10 for each person you eliminate. It's better to say once you eliminate 10 people, you'll get the total of that. So it was a little bit of how you present the information as a way of masking some of the financial realities of the budget. Just as I'm sitting there thinking about it, I am going to break the tie. I am going to side with Jason because now that I'm remembering, I was actually the guy who was on the button that would reveal how many mob members got it wrong. And we did that one at a time, just like on the old version. You would still see the people be eliminated one at a time. But I remembered we had the ability to really mess with people in terms of the speed of that reveal. So, for example, if we knew that they were 17 people away from the $10,000 threshold, I would kind of go ding, 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 ding. And then as I'm getting close to the 17, I would slow down. So sort of 14, 15, 16, pause, ding, 17, let them have it. So I would really mess with their expectation. They thought it was over, but until they saw the entire mob flash, they knew it wasn't over. So that part of it was really fun for me. Essentially, the judge got to become a personality on the show.
All right. You're 7 people away from $5,000. Let's find out how many women have just been eliminated.
Moving on from the game shows that you wrote for, I want to next talk about my favorite game show special series of all time, Game Show Marathon, which aired on CBS in 2006.
Tonight from Hollywood, a television event like no other. 6 celebrities face off on the greatest game shows of all time. Movie star Leslie Nielsen, Trading Spaces Paige Davis, NSYNC's Lance Bass, actress Kathy Najimy, Saturday Night Live's Tim Meadows, and Baywatch babe Brandy Roderick, all on Game Show Marathon. Over the next 7 episodes, the stars compete in 7 classic game shows. In the finale, our celebrity grand champion will win $100,000 for their favorite charity. Plus, there are over $1 million in cash and prizes at stake, and you at home can win it all. Tonight, we kick off our tournament with the classic game show, The Price is Right. And for one night only, host Ricky Lake will step into the shoes of the legendary Bob Barker.
Bob, I hope to do you proud. Get ready. This is Game Show Marathon.
Our survey said... We'll show you what's behind door number 2 right now. Come on down! Kings galore! First game of the magazine. Charles, a virgin ass.
From CBS Television City in Hollywood, this is Game Show Marathon. And now, here's your host, Ricky Lake.
Hi, everybody.
Tonight we celebrate the most exciting time-tested shows ever on TV. Game shows.
It's interesting because Game Show Marathon was basically the condensed version of what is happening now in the game show industry with all of the retro game show reboots.
Yeah, I mean, if memory serves, Ant and Dec were hosting a version of that in the UK. And so I guess because of the fact that it was a Fremantle show and Fremantle owned so many of those formats, before they had the idea that they could do them as standalone series or before the climate was right for that, they were able to convince CBS that, hey, we could do this as a one-off celebrity competition. So they got 6 celebrities at the time. It turned out to be one of the last things Leslie Nielsen ever did before he passed on. But he was one of our 6 celebrities. And if memory serves, every week there was a different game show. And the coolest thing about that show was that there was this entire facade of the set. And so Ricky Lake, who was hosting, would come out. She would introduce it. There was a monitor that we would project on that was on the facade of the set. And then they'd say, all right, guys, it's time to play whatever game. And the entire facade would open up and reveal a virtually identical recreation of the original set of that show. So the games that we did in the course of the 7 weeks were Price is Right, Let's Make a Deal, Beat the Clock, Press Your Luck, Card Sharks, Match Game, and Family Feud. and all the original set-looking versions of them, which was just an amazing treat. Somewhere I've got hundreds and hundreds of photographs that I took backstage, which was incredibly cool and a great experience for me. And the director of Game Show Marathon was Rich DePiro. And this is the first time that I got a chance to meet Rich. And Rich has since gone on to become the director of the new Press Your Luck most recently, but he also directs $100,000 Pyramid, as well as the Joker's Wild reboot with Snoop Dogg. And Rich is just an amazing human being. He is just a brilliant director who thinks like a producer. So he doesn't just come in on the day of the show and be like, all right, this camera there, that camera there. He's in weeks and weeks in advance thinking about the way the game is constructed, what's the best way to hide cameras, what's the best way for the host to be so that we can dramatically sell this. And really, when we think about it, the fact that he and I had this chance meeting in 2006, who would have known that we would, a decade later, be standing on the sets of a full-fledged revival in network primetime of a series of so many of those games that we created? That was kind of a great watershed moment in my personal life. But even back then, I remember we were talking about, well, for Match Game, is there a way to sort of cheat it and just cut from celebrity to celebrity in the introduction? He goes, no way. He goes, we're going to find that spinning thing. We're going to find that mortise, or if it doesn't exist, we're going to recreate it so that the thing turns around, and then as soon as it's turning 90 degrees to camera, when it rotates some more, then the next celebrity appears there. He says, we're going to make this look and feel like the original. And that's when I said, that's my man right there.
With all the retro game show sets having to be built and loaded in, what was the filming schedule like for Game Show Marathon?
I feel like we were shooting a different show every 3 days, maybe, because we were certainly developing them all simultaneously. So we had, I think, 3 different teams of producers, and every producing team would either get 2 or 3 shows that they were responsible for curating and bringing back and finding all the graphics and figuring out how the set would be built and all that. But then, of course, we only had one host, which was Ricky Lake, so we had to walk her through each game as it went. So as soon as we were done with Price is Right, we're like, okay, that's out of your mind. Here's the script for Let's Make a Deal. We'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll start rehearsing that in our office, and we'll bring you on stage once that's ready. We'll do a couple sample games, and then off we go.
If you could personally choose 7 shows to make up a season of Game Show Marathon, which game shows would you pick? And you can choose any of the shows that were actually used on Game Show Marathon as well.
A lot of them were there at the time. And again, this is a different point in time when it was 2006. So we didn't know that there would be Let's Make a Deal on every day. We didn't know that Press Your Luck was going to be a summer series. But yeah, I think of those 7, I thought it was a little weird that they started with Price is Right because that was still on the air at the time. So I'm not really sure what the thinking was to kick off a show about time capsule game shows and lead with one that was currently on the air. And same with Family Feud at the time. Feud was also on the air. So I would have probably excluded those, but I definitely would have brought back Press Your Luck, Match Game, Card Sharks, probably Let's Make a Deal. Beat the Clock I could sort of live without because I always felt like that was like a precursor to the Fear Factors and some of these bigger sort of stunt shows that have evolved from that. But selfishly, I would bring back Now You See It, which is one of my favorite guilty pleasures, being a award show guy like I am. I would bring back Hollywood Squares, which honestly ought to be a series right now. And what would get my 7th spot? Maybe I'd go totally off the map and do something like Bullseye. I always, as a kid, I loved that set with the 3 spinning hypnotic windows. And I remember being a fun game to play, but who knows, it probably doesn't hold up if I looked at it now.
This is the television game in which daring determines the fate of the player. This is the game of strategy, luck, and knowledge. This is Bullseye. Now, here's our host, Jim Lang.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Wow. Thank you so much. Yes, it's true. This is a game of strategy, a lot of knowledge, and especially daring, and we're going to find out right now.
Of course, as a kid, I was into all the buzzers and bells and the lights and the turntables and moving parts, and all of that made it exciting and fun. But in terms of what kept me coming back, it was, is the game solid? Is the game the kind of thing that is repeatable? And if you have new material, it makes you go, ooh, I want to do another one. Ooh, I want to do another one. And I think the mark of the best shows have that. I mean, you look at Wheel of Fortune, it's like, yeah, you get it. Spin the wheel, pick letters until somebody gets it. But it becomes addictive. It's like, okay, I got to solve this puzzle. I'm not going to turn the channel until I've figured this out. And that's what I think the best games have, is just really draws you in, and it's just so accessible, it's so fun, and yet you keep wanting to do more and more. And it's like, okay, great, try me again.
Another series you worked on as a co-executive producer was for GSN, and it was for an American version of a game show called Pointless, which is one of the most successful game shows in British TV history since it's been airing since 2009.
Thank you very much indeed. Hello, I'm Alexander Armstrong, and welcome to Pointless, the quiz where the aim of the game is to score as few points as you can. And you do that by coming up with the answers that no one else could think of.
Now, I remember reading back in 2017 that GSN was in development for an American version of the show, but in the end, Pointless has not reached our shores yet. I have a few questions regarding Pointless, if you wouldn't mind answering them, with the first one being, was GSN hoping to find success with Pointless after they had recently brought two other game shows from across the pond to America, The Chase and Divided?
As I understand it, the inspiration behind it was to pair it with Family Feud, because they sort of saw Pointless as Family Feud in reverse, where Family Feud was about, okay, we're going to ask you a question, there's a bunch of answers, your job is to find the most popular. But Pointless is really the inverse of that. You're trying to find something that is a correct answer, but yet is said by the least possible people, hopefully by nobody, and therefore it's pointless. And because the game has golf scoring, if you will, the goal is to keep the lowest possible score. So picking a pointless correct answer is the best possible thing that you can do when it's your turn. So they saw this as, since Family Feud was doing really well in reruns on their network with Steve Harvey, obviously they couldn't produce original episodes of Family Feud. So the thought was, okay, well, what can we do that has in the similar vein, so that as we're trying to program an evening, we can say, we'll start with Family Feud reruns. And now here's this other show that is an original for GSN at least. And if you enjoyed Family Feud, you'll love this. So that was the at least stated objective there. And in fact, what happened was GSN ordered 20 episodes, and we were totally greenlit. And in fact, we shot 2 episodes. And GSN's structure at the time was to shoot 2 episodes, pick the better of the 2 episodes, quickly edit that, take it to a focus group, and then come back with the feedback from the focus group that we could then apply to the remaining episodes in the order. So the plan from the beginning was always shoot these 2 episodes and then stop down for, I think it was maybe a week or a week and a half, and then we will resume shooting the other 18 episodes. So we did that, and we were prepping, and we were writing all the questions, and Allison Sweeney was our host. Doug Mirabello was our brilliant fact co-host, so that he would provide all the information. And we did not attend the focus group, but GSN went, and they said, we'll give you a call as soon as it's over. And we subsequently got the phone call, and it was not what we expected. It was, well, we tested it. They didn't like it. We're canceling the show. So that was a surprise to all of us. But I think if you read a little bit between the lines, GSN was also in the process of changing management at the time. And whereas they were once in the business of licensing successful games and trying to co-opt things that were successful elsewhere, like The Chase or even Catch-21, which was essentially a revival of Gambit, they were in the process of creating entirely original shows that they owned. They could then control. If it was a hit, they could then franchise it around the world and make money for that. By actually doing Pointless, they were committing to paying the money to the production company that owned the rights for that, so they would license it. They could not license it themselves anywhere else in success. And also they had Allison Sweeney, who was a known host. She had hosted network shows, and so they were paying a decent salary for her. So I think for them, the show really would have had to rate very highly to justify continuing paying that kind of money for a series. And since it didn't, they just decided that they were going to bag the whole thing, which is a shame because it really looked good. It would have been good, but never got a chance to be tested on the audience at large.
British TV has far less commercial time than American TV, and the Pointless game takes up a large chunk of its hour-long time slot back in England. Did you have to modify the game to fit within the typical 44 minutes or so for an hour-long American show?
Yeah, we did. I'm trying to remember all the details. I know that we had 3 teams of 2. And I believe in the British version, there's 4 teams, if I'm not mistaken. And they have an hour show. And I remember when we looked at it, we're like, this does not feel like an hour. This feels like a half hour. I'd rather have it be jam-packed and leave them wanting more rather than doing an hour that feels like it drags. So to that end, I think we made the right decision in eliminating one team and making less questions and making it a half-hour format. I will say the coolest thing that we did was we took the thermometer, if you will, that big sort of set piece that when it says, all right, let's find out how many people said it, and it starts at 100 and it starts ticking down one notch at a time.
Best of luck. Very, very best of luck. Let's find out. The shadow in the north. Is it right? Is it a pointless answer? Well, it's right. The subtle knife took us down to 5. The ruby in the smoke down to 3. The shadow in the north still going down. Down it goes, still going. You've done it! That's fantastic. Very well done.
In the UK version, the entire thing is digital from 100 to 0. In our version, we made it digital from 100 to 11. And once you got to step 10, all the way down to 0, we actually made it physical light-up steps. They were like lucite steps. We called them the Billie Jean steps, which you're probably too young, but maybe you've seen the video in Billie Jean where Michael Jackson steps on each square and it lights up. Once it started counting down and we knew that this was a very unpopular answer and it was, oh my God, it might actually be 0, one physical step would light up one at a time and it would be like 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if it was 0, it would land on this big 0-shaped physical floor piece. And it looked great, and it was really cool. And it was so cool, in fact, that the British people were like, can you send us video of that? And I think they were intrigued by the possibility of maybe incorporating that somewhere else in another territory because they really liked that as a creative wrinkle to it.
Do you think Pointless is too smart for today's audience? Because I don't know how tough the questions were on the American pilot of the show, but a lot of the questions on the British version of the show are quite hard.
I definitely do. In fact, one of the notes that we got back was that people just did not understand how the game was played because it's sort of counterintuitive. We're so hardwired to Family Feud where it's, I want the thing with the most points. I want to pick the most obvious answer. So the idea that we're now reversing that and we're having to do like a deep dive into obscure answers was hard for most people to get their head around. And it's the kind of thing that if you had put on 20 episodes, if you watch 1 or 2 episodes, you get the hang of it eventually. But it's not as sort of instant. So I could see where a focus group who's there and they're kind of not necessarily game heads to begin with. They're sort of a cross-section of whomever and probably not looking to be tremendously challenged intellectually in their focus group. And then suddenly this comes on and you're like, wait, huh? 0's the right answer? And I sort of get it because it is a bizarre show to get your head around. And then even once you do get your head around it, you have to decide, do I like that? Do I like a show that's about the most obscure thing you can think of? Like, is that really satisfying? And some people love that, but I think that some other people like the low-hanging fruit. And I think that's why Family Feud is really one of the great formats because everybody immediately has 1, 2, 3 answers off the top of their head, but the survey has 6 answers on it. And so there's a chance there's going to be one thing left on the board. What's that? So it kind of gradually eases you into it. You start with the obvious and you eventually get to the obscure. And Pointless is right out of the gate. Let's go obscure. So it's not for everybody. And the other thing, too, is, for my opinion, I think trying to pair it with Family Feud was actually a huge mistake because even though it sounds like they're kindred spirits, the type of person who excels at each game is very different. The kind of person that knows deep, deep trivia, if you were to say, name a Disney movie, and it's got to be something that is actually a Disney movie, but yet few people would say. So it's like instead of saying 101 Dalmatians, you're going for the Black Cauldron, hoping that that's something that most people would not think of. It's a very, very different game to play, and it appeals to a different audience. I honestly think pairing that with The Chase would have made a lot more sense than pairing it with Family Feud.
Right, and they could have named the primetime lineup the British Invasion of GSN.
I like that idea. Oh, man, if only you were an exec over there. Things could have been so different.
And then throw in Divided as well.
And Divided, yeah.
I know there was a pilot for an American version of The Cube that was made with Neil Patrick Harris as host several years ago, and Nickelodeon is creating an American version of The Crystal Maze. Brad fact! But I was wondering if you might know of any other British game shows that are coming to America in the near future.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I was in a pitch meeting recently, not with a network, but with a production company. And they're the ones who go out and try to sell shows to the networks based on their relationships. And what I've heard is that the economics have changed even for major networks, and that they're trying not to license shows that are pre-existing because that immediately limits their ability to sell it internationally themselves and make that money. So there's actually more of a shift toward creating original formats and trying to launch those. So who knows? The pendulum swings both ways. I mean, obviously, Summer Fun and Games is working really well for ABC. They'll probably continue to bring back classic shows. But in terms of us seeing Cash Trapped or some of these other games that are doing well in the UK as a US version, probably not likely anytime soon from what I'm hearing.
Just imagine if Only Connect came to America. But I think that Only Connect is a prime example of a British quiz show that is way too smart for the average American audience.
Oh, man, that would be great. I would love it. The truth is, most people who are watching game shows are not the smartest minds in America. No insult to game show audiences, but it's a very limited subset of people like you and I who are obsessed with game and like a good layered challenge. I used to joke around. I said there was a time when people could really wrap their head around very complex, layered types of games. And now what's the decision point that people can get in their head? Deal or no deal? It's like it's got to, at its core, be very simple. And you have to be careful about how much intricacy you introduce to it, because people look at game shows as escapism. There's enough crazy, intricate stuff, people out there trying to read the Mueller report and all that. It's like nobody wants to do a deep dive into game show bylaws, unfortunately. I shouldn't say nobody, but I would say the general populace wants a game that has an accessible entry point and then builds in a gradual, not too crazy way. And I think if you look at just the shows that tend to keep lasting, it's the ones that are fairly simple and repeatable. I'm always glad when some network is willing to take a swing and try something that nobody else is doing. And usually if it works, going back to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, it's like no one had ever thought of $1 million quiz show in prime time in modern day. This will never work. But it did. And then when it did, everybody else was like, ooh, we want some of that too. So it just started a trend. So all it takes is one trailblazer to try something a little different and for it to work. And then suddenly that's the new normal.
Well, you better watch out, Aaron, because I'm going to create the next Trailblazer show.
Do it. I'm looking forward to that.
Before we get to the game, I want to talk about a couple other game show pilots that you worked on, because for me, game show pilots are one of the most fascinating aspects about the industry. So the first one I want to talk about is Split Second, which I'm presuming is the same Split Second that I know and love from the 70s and 80s.
Is a shooting star really a comet? You'll find out when one of these three contestants wins the chance to drive home in this brand new Pontiac Fiero GT in just a split second. And now, here's the star of our show, Monty Hall. Thank you very much and welcome to Split Second.
Yeah, this is something Scott Stone, formerly of Stone Stanley, hired me to oversee the presentation of. And he had partnered with Monty Hall and gotten the rights. And the idea was, since everybody was kind of developing everything as an hour-long primetime game show, could we make Split Second an hour-long primetime game show and then have a huge prize? So what we did was we took most of the game. There was some leeway that was done to kind of simplify it a little because the mechanics of Split Second, I think, are fun but a little confusing. We streamlined it a little bit, and then we made it a team game where it was one team of 5 would play against another team of 5, a la Family Feud. And you would buzz in and you would try to pick off as many of the 3 answers as you could. And if anybody hesitated, they would get timed out and the other team could jump in and steal the rest of it. And they were all playing for, it was like a dream house is what we actually had, not to be confused with the show Dream House. So we put together a presentation that we did at this theater in Hollywood, and we brought every network in, and each network had their own session. And we would play the game again with a new pair of families. And I got a chance to meet Monty Hall, who showed up to one of them, and he was very complimentary about what we did, whether he believed it or not, whether he thought we butchered his idea or not. But unfortunately, it never sold. So it lives in the annals of attempted game shows that have not yet gotten a revival.
With today's game show reboot trend, do you think Split Second would have a better chance of getting picked up?
I think anything has a chance now. I mean, thanks in large part to Rob Mills at ABC. I've had the pleasure to meet, and Rob is as big a fan of game shows as you and I are, which is an amazing notion for somebody in the position of power that he is. And the fact that he's been able to bring back 6 classic daytime shows as primetime means anything's possible. Who would have thought Gong Show would come back? Who would have thought Card Sharks in primetime? But yet that is something that the industry is now accepting and embracing, and it's rating well enough as a summer replacement program. Who knows? Split Second could come back.
The second pilot I want to talk about is for The Singing Bee, which aired on NBC in 2007 with host Joey Fatone, before having a more successful run on CMT from 2009 to 2012 with host Melissa Peterman. You were a supervising producer on The Singing Bee pilot, so I'm curious, were there any major differences between The Singing Bee pilot and what eventually went on the air on NBC?
It was pretty much the same show. Some of the rounds were not exactly played the same way, but really most of the essence of it was there. This was at the time where Fox had their own version of every other show, and so it became this race to the air. So there was The Chair versus The Chamber, and then there were the 2 boxing shows, the Mark Burnett one and then Fox's show. And then, of course, they had Don't Forget the Lyrics. And then Singing Bee, once again with Phil Gurin. So people were like, we want to do a karaoke show as a game show. And it's like, what if we stopped the music and you had to sing whatever's next? We were able to figure out the nuances of that. Being a music guy myself, that's like my big avocation. I play in a band on the side and I write music as well. So I think they liked the fact that I was able to look at songs and say, find a song where pretty much everyone knows this section of the song. Like I've always said, everybody knows Duran Duran. I said, but nobody can sing me a single verse. Everybody only knows the choruses, which is its own game show probably. But you have to think about that. What is the best section of any song to use? And then does that section repeat at any point, and do the lyrics change at all? Because if they change, then multiple answers could be acceptable. So we went through that whole process of how to pull the best clip, what's the best way to pull a variety of genres so that, let's say you don't know country music, great. That's one question you'll get wrong, but the next one will be hip hop, and the next one will be rock, and the next one will be easy listening. So we created the core of that, and pretty much what we developed was what you saw on air.
Hey, what's up? I'm Joey Fatone, and welcome to The Singing Bee! Somebody here is gonna be crowned tonight's Singing Bee champion and have a chance to win some big money. So let's find some contestants. Are you guys ready? Come on! Everyone's watching, see what you will do. Everyone's looking. All right, get on up there. We got one contestant. Everyone's wondering. All right, go ahead, get on up there. Woo! We got 2 contestants. Four more. Everybody's working for the week. Get on up there. Everybody wants a new romance. Need 3 more. Everybody's going off the deep end. Get on up there. Woo! 2 more. Who's it gonna be? Oh, you want a piece of my heart? You wanna be in the show? Get up there. Come on, baby, let's go. You want a piece of my heart? All right, here are tonight's 6 contestants. One of them will survive and become tonight's Singing Bee champion. Who will it be? Well, there's only one way. So let's get started.
For you, is it more fun working on pilots because you're involved in the creation phase of a game show? Or is it more fun to work on long-running game shows because of their impact on the game show industry?
That's a good question, and I will give you a mixed answer to that. I think if it's a pilot that is a really fun, interesting idea that I spark to, then I definitely enjoy that process because I love nothing more than the creative process behind creating and developing and tweaking and refining and getting a show just right. but it's also a ton of work. Whenever you do a pilot, you're creating everything from the ground up, and there's a lot of late nights. There's a lot of second guessing. There's always the possibility that you put in a 15-hour day and you deliver a video of a run-through to the network, and the next day they're like, I don't know if this works with trivia. Can we try it as a word game? That kind of thing. And then suddenly you're completely back to the drawing board because you have nothing to hang your hat on at that point. So there's always the risk that you're going to put a tremendous amount of time and effort into a show that may not even ever air and see the light of day. So I would say if I really, really love the premise of a show, then I'd choose a pilot. But there's also something really nice about jumping on a show that is a success, and there may be challenges to kind of keep it fresh and keep it going, and stunt casting or whatever you have to do to kind of breathe life into it. But at least that the show is the show.
It's one of those exciting things when you do get to do a pilot, but then you hop on a show like Pyramid where it's so iconic and a dream job.
Pyramid was amazing for me because it was the best of both worlds. It was a show that was coming back, so we were still building a new set, and we were figuring out the electronics behind it and what the music suite was going to be, which is to modernize it and bring it into the 2010s, if you will. Thankfully, Rob Mills and Vin Rubino and everybody involved was committed to keeping the DNA the same. We weren't trying to reformat the show. About the only thing that we played around with really was the tiebreaker, which I know is very controversial, but that was purely a program time issue where we couldn't allow the possibility of playing 2 more rounds of words that start with the letter F, words that start with the letter R. We just had to come up with some quick, instant way to break a tie. But other than that, the show, the orientation of the set, we already knew. Whatever the small pyramid and big pyramid looked like, they were going to be placed in the same places that they were in the 80s and the 70s. And then it was just a matter of how do we bring Michael up to speed and make this as great as it can be.
And I think it's turned out pretty well, if I might say.
It's awesome. I mean, you and I, we were on the same set together. I remember I had a chance to host a rehearsal game, and you were in the winner's circle. And if my memory is serving me correctly, that's, I think, where we first got a chance to talk, actually. And working in the business, we tend to get lost in the whole early call times and, oh, my God, it's a drudgery and all that. But then you have these moments of standing on stage of Pyramid, the Valhalla of game shows of all time. And it's like, how did we get so lucky to be able to be involved in this?
Your memory's doing well. That's correct. And off stage, that red chair is just a chair. But in that circle, it means so much more.
Yeah. It's still, I think, the best bonus round ever created. And I can say that freely because I did not have a hand in creating it. I was privileged to be able to be a part of the team that brought the show back. But that 60 seconds of working your way up the pyramid, it's so perfectly formatted. It's so simple. It's got the aesthetics of watching the trilon turn, the sense of accomplishment. You're on to the next one, and you're working your way up literally and figuratively in terms of dollar amounts. And you have to get on the same wavelength as your partner. And the nuances of watching somebody give a clue that's not quite perfect and it takes somebody in the wrong direction, and you're like, will they bring them back or are they hopelessly lost? There's just so much that happens in that 60 seconds. And then, of course, the flute clock that just adds to the tension. It's just phenomenal. It's as dramatic as anything on TV, game show or scripted show.
For $100,000, Victor, here's your first subject. Go.
Pigeon, seagull.
Kinds of birds.
Yeah. Private, lieutenant, sergeant.
A person in the military.
Yeah. I'm almost due.
Something a pregnant woman would say.
Yeah. Because it's raining outside. Because it's
Why
hot.
Why you would have a
because I don't want rain to fall on me.
Why you would have an umbrella?
Yeah. Your nose, your runny nose.
Things you wipe.
Your sick nose.
Things
your,
you blow.
LA traffic. LA traffic lanes.
Things that are congested.
Yes. Your tie. Your television brightness. Your
things that are colored.
Your necktie. Your crooked necktie.
Things you adjust.
And speaking of clocks and dramatics, Aaron, it's time for my favorite portion of the game show. It is time for the game of the day.
Game of the day.
And as I mentioned at the top of the show, I have created a Bradley Clarke original version of the game that you created, Aaron. So get ready to change your title from A.K.A. creator to A.K.A. player for the next few minutes, because it's time to play A.K.A. A.K.A. And here's how we play this Bradley Clarke version of A.K.A. There's going to be a total of 6 rounds, each of which corresponds with a different decade, starting with the 50s and going up to the 2000s and 2010s. During every round, you'll have a total of 60 seconds to name the titles of up to 10 television game shows that aired sometime during that decade. However, keep in mind, the game show didn't necessarily have to premiere on television in that decade it's featured in. But as long as an incarnation of the show aired sometime during that decade, it is an eligible answer. Of course, to help you guess the titles, I'll give you an A.K.A. clue, which, as you know, is a way the title of the game show could possibly be expressed in different words. So, for example, if the decade was the 70s and I said Circle of Riches, the correct game show title would be Wheel of Fortune. Now, Aaron, you'll score 1 point for every correct answer you give, and by the end of the 6th round, if you can score 25 points or more, you'll be deemed a winner. In addition, you may choose one of the 6 rounds to increase your time by 15 seconds for a round clock total of 75 seconds. The choice must be made before the questioning of that round starts, and just a bit of advice, I suggest you use your extra 15 seconds for a decade that you feel the least confident in. Those are all the rules. Aaron, are you ready to play?
Let's do it.
Then let's play A.K.A. And Aaron, keep in mind you may pass, and if time permits, we'll come back to it. And there's no penalty for a wrong answer, so guess as many times as you want before passing. Remember, 25 points or more are needed to win. Don't forget about your extra 15 seconds that you can use on any one single decade of your choosing. And let's start with round 1, which is all about television game shows that aired in the 1950s.
50s. Oof. I feel like I might want to use my 15 seconds here.
Do you want to?
Well, let's see. Maybe not. I'm trying to think. Because the 50s has all the panel shows. Maybe I'll save it for the 60s, because I feel like I'm good from the 70s forward. Yeah, let's save it. I'll save it for the 60s.
Alrighty, we're going to save it. So round 1, the 1950s. Time will not start until I finish reading the first clue.
Okay.
Defeat the Watch.
Beat the clock.
Correct. Elizabeth for 24 hours.
Queen for a day.
Correct. Gamble your existence.
You Bet Your Life.
Correct. Tell me the song.
Name that tune.
Correct. Teacher, correct and incorrect.
Professor, right and wrong. So can you repeat the clue?
Teacher, correct and incorrect.
Professor, right and wrong. Oh, boy, I probably not passed this.
Blackjack.
21.
Correct. 2-calorie mint money.
Tic-tac-toe.
Correct. Charade test.
Charade test. Pantomime quiz.
Correct. You have confidential information.
I've got a secret.
Correct. Children judges.
Juvenile jury.
Correct. Going back. Teacher, correct and incorrect.
Oh, boy. Professor.
Time's up.
Oh, what was it?
You were close. Professor Yes and No.
Oh, my gosh. I've never heard of that.
Hosted by Bill Cullen.
Wow.
Professor Yes and No, starring Bill Cullen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our modern version of the Little Red Schoolhouse. Now, for the next 15 minutes, we're going to play Yes and No, the original game in television where you, the television audience, play our game and win all the prizes.
But you did phenomenally well. 9 correct.
Thank you.
So now we're moving on to the 1960s. You mentioned you might want to use your 15 seconds. Do you want to?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so you're going to have 75 seconds total. These are all game shows that aired sometime during the 1960s, and time once again won't begin until I finish reading the first clue. California boxes.
Hollywood Squares.
Correct. Tape Town.
Video Village.
Correct. Pupil prediction.
Pupil prediction, you said?
Yes.
Pass it.
I can't speak.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I can't speak.
You Don't Say.
Correct. Nightmare Mansion.
Haunted House. Dream House.
Correct. Tinkle Snyder Pool Stick.
Say that again.
Tinkle Snyder Pool Stick.
PDQ.
Correct. University Dish.
College Bowl.
Correct. Letter Thank You.
Letter Thank You. Pass it.
Can't Find Sausages.
Missing Links.
Correct. The Show Show.
Your shows program. Pass it.
Pupil Prediction.
Pupil Prediction. I guess.
Correct, but it was after the buzzer.
Oh.
Just after the buzzer, but it was I guess.
Okay.
Let's go back to the ones you passed on. Letter Thank You is Number Please.
Oh.
And the show is the game.
The game. Okay, got it.
But you got 7 correct.
That's good. So I'm at 16 so far, right?
Which means you are at 16, yes.
All right.
And you only need 25, so good use of the 15 seconds. We're moving on now to 1970s game shows.
All right. I ought to be able to win it here, but it all depends how deep of a cut you go.
Let's reset your clock at 1 minute. And time starts after I read the first clue. Fibber's Bar.
Liars Club.
Correct. Divide Minute.
Divide Minute. Split Second.
Correct. Triangle.
Pyramid.
Correct. Hallmark Jaws.
Hallmark Jaws.
Yes.
Card Mouth. Greeting card. Teeth. Pass it.
Blabbermouths.
Tattletales.
Correct. Slide the Dollar.
Pass the buck.
Correct. Attentiveness.
Concentration.
Correct. Athletics Competition.
Athletic competition. Sports game. Sports quiz. Pass it.
Crack the Chase.
Can you repeat that?
Crack the Chase.
Pass that.
Limerick and Explanation.
Rhyme and Reason.
Correct. Going back. Hallmark Jaws.
Hallmark Jaws. Card Sharks.
Correct. Right at the buzzer.
Oh, good.
You got 8.
Jaws. I don't know why I didn't think the shark at first. I was thinking a mouse and mandible and teeth.
The ones you missed were Athletics Competition at Sports Challenge.
Okay.
And Crack the Chase is Break the Bank.
Chase the bank. Chase bank. Got it.
So you have 24. You need 1 to win.
Yeah.
But like I did when I played, let's keep going after you score the winning point.
Great.
So
fun. You're good at this. I should hire you for the second edition if we have one.
Well, you know I'm always available. 1980s game shows is the category.
Yeah, this should be my sweet spot. This is what I grew up watching.
Okay, so let's try to get all 10.
Probably jinx myself, but okay, here we go.
60 seconds on the clock. Time starts after I read the first clue. Anatomy Dialect.
Body language.
Correct. Sofa Spuds.
Couch potatoes.
Correct. An Archer's Objective.
An Archer's Objective? Bullseye.
Correct. Only Males.
Just Men.
Correct. The Large Wheel.
The Big Spin.
Correct. Kids Frolic.
Kids Frolic. Child's Play.
Correct. Triple Speak.
Triple Speak. 3. Say, make me laugh. Pass it.
Aunts and Uncles Battle.
Family Feud.
Correct. Slap Boy.
Can you say that again?
Slap Boy.
Slap Boy?
Yes.
Hitman.
Correct. Transaction of 100 years.
Tale of Century.
Correct. Going back. Triple Speak.
Oh, man. Say something you don't say.
Time's up. Triple Speak. It's the only one you missed.
Triple Speak. Oh, okay. Tell me what it was.
Double Talk.
Oh, I was literally thinking something that was 3 or something. Double Talk. Got it. Okay.
But Aaron, congratulations. With now 33 points, you have won this game of A.K.A.
Yeah, all right.
Would you like to go on to the 90s and beyond?
Of course.
So these are all 1990s game shows.
Okay. Were there 10 1990s game shows?
This was the hardest one to create.
I bet. Yeah, this was kind of the most fallow time, I feel like. All right, let's try.
60 seconds on the clock. And here comes your first A.K.A. clue. Julius's Competition.
Caesar's Challenge.
Correct. Atlantic City board game.
Monopoly.
Correct. Money owed.
Debt.
Correct. Spend until you fall.
Shop till you drop.
Correct. Money hungry.
Greed.
Correct. Triple truth.
Triple truth. Double. Pass it.
Beverly Hills Street.
Rodeo Drive.
Correct. Computer mouse sound.
Click.
Correct. The film Know-It-Alls.
Oh, Beat Geeks?
No.
No. The movie experts, the movie geeks, movie film know-it-alls. Movie geniuses?
No.
Pass it.
Doubled in.
Doubled in?
Yeah.
To... Oh, boy. I don't know. Pass it.
Time's up.
Oh.
You got 7.
Is there any we didn't get to?
No, you got to them all.
Okay.
The ones you missed were Triple Truth, that's Double Dare.
Oh, okay, got it.
The film Know-It-Alls, that was the hardest one. The movie Masters.
Ooh, I've never heard of that. When did that air?
It was a movie trivia show that aired on AMC from August 1989 to January 1990, so it just qualified for the 90s game show category, and it was actually the last ever game show hosted by Gene Rayburn. Brad fact!
It's time now for everyone's favorite movie game show, the Movie Masters. Now let's meet the Movie Masters. The toast of both coasts and an Oscar nominee, Miss Peggy Cass.
He's the critic's critic from the New York Post, Mr. Clive Barnes.
She's the classiest woman on television and one of Groucho's favorite leading ladies, Miss Kitty Carlisle.
And now, my very good friend and the best panel moderator in the business, Mr. Gene Rayburn.
Thank you, Laurie, for the nice walk-in. And thank you, Kitty Carlisle, for that elegant introduction. All of you do indeed look elegant. Aren't they a lovely bunch of coconuts? Yeah. Okay, welcome to Movie Masters. Let me begin by giving you the rules. Here's how we play. A scene from a classic movie is hidden behind the game board there. Answer a question correctly, and a portion of the scene is revealed. Guess the title of the movie, and you win the game. You also win a grand prize for one lucky home viewer, plus a bonus prize for every correct answer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the last one doubled in, that's singled out.
Ah, got it.
Well, you got 7, which means you have a total of 40. And we've reached the 6th and final round, which will consist of game shows from the 2000s and 2010s.
All right, 21st century.
60 seconds on the clock. And here comes your first A.K.A. clue. Wager on your infant.
Bet on your baby.
Correct. California Play Day.
Play Day. L.A., Hollywood. Oh, Hollywood Showdown? No. Hollywood Game Night.
Correct. Grab everything.
Take it all.
Correct. Cat consumes cat.
Dog eat dog.
Correct. Medieval battle.
Joust? No. Medieval battle. Gauntlet? No, pass it.
Ability of the number of fingers.
Power of 10.
Correct. Sweets smash.
Sweet smashed? Candy Crush.
Correct. Which person remains upright?
Who's still standing?
Correct. The pursue.
The chase.
Correct. Explode.
Boom.
Correct. Medieval battle. Time's up. That was the only one you missed, and I actually thought that was a tough one myself.
Okay.
Actually, one of my favorites, Duel.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Well done.
But out of the possible 60, you got 49.
Wow. Cool.
So, Aaron, congratulations once again on winning this Game Show Decades Bradley Clarke original version of A.K.A.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be on this side of the ledger.
Well, I hope you enjoyed those clues.
It was great. Yeah, nice job on the writing. As somebody who's written 1,000 of these, I salute you. You have some sense of what my pain was in trying to generate these all. Sure, it wasn't a pain. It was a pleasurable grind.
Oh, yeah, you know me. I love writing all this stuff, and I'll do whatever it takes to make a great game.
Absolutely. You got the right perspective.
And that was the game of the day, A.K.A. A.K.A. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for once again joining me on the game show and for helping me celebrate another episode milestone.
Absolutely, and thank you. You're doing a great job hosting the show, and thanks for keeping game shows alive, and it's really been a pleasure. Thanks for chatting with me.
And one more time, Aaron, tell all the listeners about A.K.A. and where they can purchase a copy of the game if they'd like to.
So A.K.A. is available now on Amazon. You can also go to endlessgames.com. I'm told it's going to be in Kohl's department stores as well. Hopefully, thanks to the publicity boost we get from the game show with Bradley Clarke, that will only lead to bigger and better exposure opportunities for the game.
Well, I love to help out my fellow game show industry comrades whenever I can. And speaking of the game show industry, do you have any exciting projects coming up?
Quite a few things. The highlights are, I mentioned this earlier when I was failing at your example for A.K.A., but I was actually fortunate to sell a pilot of a game show called Moneyballs that was piloted in Madrid, Spain earlier this year. So that was exciting to fly over there and watch that come to life. So they're in the process of trying to sell that as a series somewhere in the world. And in the board game space, I actually have pitched, hopefully it could be my third game with Endless Games. They're taking a look at it right now. We're in discussions and we'll see how it goes. If all goes well, knocking wood.
Well, I'll be knocking on wood for you as well. So best of luck, Aaron, with Moneyballs, your next game creation, and of course, much success with A.K.A., also known as.
Thank you.
Alrighty, take care.
Be well. Bye.
Well, that's going to do it for this special 2-hour milestone 40th episode of The Game Show. My thanks once again to game show producer and creator of the game A.K.A., also known as Aaron Solomon, for being my special guest for a second time. Now, if you missed out on hearing the game show career of Aaron Solomon Part 1, or if you'd like to listen to Part 1 and Part 2 back-to-back, all you have to do is log on to Audible Stratus, a.k.a. SoundCloud, and specifically www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. That's www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. Plus, don't forget to like The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Facebook, and follow The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Twitter using the handle @TheGameShowBC and #TheGameShow. But of course, be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of The Talk Show, all about the world of television game and competition shows, The Game Show. For the 40th time, I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, saying purchase 3 later, a.k.a. buy 4 now. The $100,000 Pyramid audio cuts are courtesy of the ABC Television Network.
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke and was recorded at the WRHU studios. This is Austin Angelo speaking.
The Game Show is a Bradley Clarke production. Get your game on.